morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the debate on the Prague European Summit that will be dealing with the issue of green transitioning. What role can industry play towards an ambitious, sustainable industrial strategy for 2030 and 2050? Now, as we all know, industry is at the heart of several transformations. Decarbonisation on one hand, automation, robotisation, and digitalisation on the other. And these potentially disruptive developments mandate the European Union to ensure an inclusive and socially responsible transformation to the benefits of citizens. My name is Tomáš Jungwirth. I am head of climate team at the Association for International Affairs, a think tank based here in Prague. And I'll have the privilege and the honor to lead this esteemed panel. Now let me introduce our panelists. I hope that all three of them are already online. It seems definitely so. We have a very esteemed and accomplished panel of three amazing women. Let me go in alphabetical order. First, I'd like to present Ms. Claudia Olsson, who is the founder and chair of Stellar Capacity, a global education company specialized in professional development related to digital transformation. And among other things that she's done in her career, Claudia co-authored the Vision for Industry 2030 of the European Union, and also previously set up and managed the policy think tank ACC-EES. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be a part of this.
Pleasure to have you on the panel. As a second, please let me introduce Ms. Nilgun Tas, who is the Deputy Director of the Department of Environment at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and also leading the UNIDO's cross-departmental team for circular economy. Welcome, Ms. Tas.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure also for me to be able to join you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for us. And last but not least, and we're now experiencing some technical difficulties, but we believe to have Ulrike Rabmer-Koller, an entrepreneur and Vice President of SME United coming from Austria, also joining us. Hopefully she resolves the difficulties very shortly. Now, I propose several guiding questions for this panel that I would like you to try to address, at least in part, in your opening remarks. And then we will get into an interactive discussion on what is really the role of industry in this green transitioning. So let me just pose those questions so that also the audience can have an idea what we should be talking about on this panel. So first of all, the question of what is the positioning of industry, particularly in Europe, as regards the climate and sustainability agenda. And have we been witnessing a sort of a change of attitude lately in the context of the European Green Deal debate? Second question which I would like to address is, which notable transformations are already underway in the industrial sector when it comes to making the value chains more sustainable, and what can we expect in the near future? So what is there for industry, and where can industry really be leaders and perhaps even ahead of the political discourse? Now third, how can the global competitiveness of European industries be safeguarded vis-a-vis the climate policies? And I think this is a very pertinent question that many industrial leaders are asking. A growing price on carbon, more regulation on, say, how cars should be effective and efficient. And all of that, of course, creates additional pressure on European industry already under strain by global competitors. So what can be done, and what does industry actually expect from the European leaders in this regard? And last but definitely not least, the question of the social impact and social benefits and opportunities that are stemming from this multiple and multidimensional transition. So all of those questions I would like us to address during our panel. I know it's ambitious, but let's get into it straight away. So Ms. Olsen, if you would be so kind to start with your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm joining this debate very much from a perspective of working with digital leadership. From Stellar Capacity side, we are training digital leaders to be at the very forefront of understanding and implementing cutting-edge technologies to make sure that we can reach the society that is inclusive with high living standards, which is also enabling a great economy that is thriving, and of course a green economy. And coming to this discussion with this perspective, of course, I have had a chance to had a lot of dialogues and a lot of interactions with leaders from across industry for many years. And I definitely see that there has been a shift in attitude during the past 10, 15 years. 10, 15 years ago, you needed to speak with leaders to assure and to inspire leaders to see the importance of shifting towards a more green perspective. You needed to highlight the benefits and the competitive benefits of actually having a sustainable orientation. Now, it seems as more and more leaders, more and more industries and governments are understanding the sense of urgency, the importance. And this is also something, of course, that the popular opinion has started to highlight, understand, and engage in. Being Swedish, I could possibly not enter this debate without mentioning, of course, the impact individuals like Greta Thunberg have had on creating a global engagement and investment in these topics as well. So we've definitely seen during the past 10 years that there has been a shift and more industries, people understanding the importance. But now we're also seeing that more and more leaders are actually seeking how you address these issues. They know it's important, but now they're looking for concrete measures going forward. So this is something that we really need to focus on to enable leaders to leverage innovation, digitalization, policies, collaboration to be able to address the hows. So the motivation is there. We can also see that during the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of individuals and a lot of studies show that individuals are really seeking that their economic recovery agenda that we're creating, that they take into account that the economic recovery should have a green focus, that we should focus on our global goals and on our environmental goals. In relation to this, of course, digitalization is playing a huge role in terms of the possibilities it's open up for industry. We're seeing that by connecting more and more devices, basically creating a smart industry where we can follow everything from all the inputs, energy usage, monitoring machinery, monitoring maintenance, using predictive analytics to make sure that we have as an efficient and energy efficient production as possible, to conducting life cycle analysis and being able to track every single item through its full potential life cycle. That is something that's being enabled now through digitalization. But to be able to leverage this, of course, we need to train also skills to be able to leverage all these technologies and the opportunities they present. So this is something I see as imperative going forward, that digitalization can provide a lot of solutions to what we're seeing, but it needs to come with an active push and active upskilling so that we can identify the opportunities and make the most of them. I also see, of course, that SMEs will play a huge role in this, and I know I'm for my colleague America will speak further to the topic, but I'm seeing that we need to invest in innovation and new startups in the clean tech and green tech space, enabling more new green unicorns to really have a transformative impact. And of course, we're not doing this as a sacrifice. We're doing this because it's a huge business opportunity for industry, for entire Europe. And the world has recognized this. China, for example, is already now producing more than 70% of the solar modules in the world. And of course, energy storage is, for example, an area where many industries are really investing to be ahead. And Europe has the potential to position itself in this. So to round off my introductory statement, I'm looking forward to discussing this more, but I definitely see that digitalization is providing a lot of potential solutions. And if we can learn, if we can upskill, if we can implement technology, and of course work together with governments, with academia, creating favorable, innovative, basically settings for the innovation, we can definitely also reach the goals we set out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for these opening remarks. And I believe we can now also officially welcome on the panel Ms. Ulrike Rabman-Kolle, who was able to join us after all. I'm very happy that has been possible, who is an entrepreneur and vice president of SME United and the chair of SME United's Sustainable Development Committee. And she has actually worked in different roles at SME United for the past years, also as a president. So she is a very accomplished entrepreneur coming from Austria. I'm very happy that you could make it to the panel. Welcome, Mr. Rabman-Kolle.
Thank you for inviting me, and I hope that you can hear me. We had to switch something, so I had technical problems, so that's why I was late, but I hope we managed now to solve it.
It seems to be working just fine, so thank you very much once again. In my introduction, I only presented the theme of the panel and the guiding questions that you've received from my side, so I believe you haven't really missed on too much, and I hope you were able to follow most of Claudia's remarks as well. But let me now give the floor for Ms. Nilgun Taas for her opening remarks that I asked her to provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomasz. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you. Greetings to you all from Vienna, to my fellow panelists, as well as the audience. I come from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and we are the specialized agency of the United Nations that is mandated to accelerate inclusive and sustainable industrial development. We have 170 member states, including most of the European Union member states, but primarily developing countries. Our mandate requires us to work with industrial firms, industrial and other service providers that feed into manufacturing or use manufactured products. So we are the UN's agency that supports the business community in all our member states. Our advice and assistance to firms has to make a business case that we engage with. We also work closely with the government and consumers to create, with the governments, to assist them to create favorable environment for firms to start up and flourish, and with consumers to enable them to understand what they consume and create demand for products, greener products, as this is our topic today. We have a very strong case for green transitions that make a business case. Firms will not will move forward on greening their operations and their products unless it makes a business case. And we know this because we have been working over the last 4 decades with thousands and thousands of companies all over the world. In fact, our work has resulted in setting up by governments or autonomous entities in different countries. In 51 countries, there are 65 resource efficient and cleaner production centers that we have helped create, which are all autonomous, some of them also in the private sector, that help firms, small and medium firms primarily, to improve their operations, which simultaneously reduce production costs and prevents waste and pollution, therefore have positive environmental results. Let me give you a few examples why firms are taking the lead, even in developing countries, to green their operations, to improve their sustainability. For instance, we also closely work with the European Commission, with EU-funded EU-funded projects and programs. A recent and right now is in its second phase, a Switch Med program has worked with until end of 2019, 125 small and medium firms that have been working in food processing, tiles, parts and components that feed into European value chain leading company products. And through saving raw materials, energy, and water, these 125 firms were able to achieve cost savings, financial savings of 42 million euros per year. Translates into approximate, on the average, about 336,000 euros per firm per year, which is an undeniably significant financial savings, leveraging another 700,000 euros per year over payback periods of approximately 2 to 2.5 years. This is great. It's great for business, but the savings have been 3.5 million cubic meters of water, 707 gigawatt hours of energy, and 35 tons of raw materials per year. So obviously, a very significant environmental impact. In CO2 equivalent emissions, this translates into 200,000 tons per year of CO2 emissions, only from 125 small and medium firms in 8 North African countries. So obviously this makes both the business case, but translates into significant environmental benefits. And in these companies, there were about 32,000 jobs, which were all maintained, and about 2 to 3% of these 32,000 jobs were freshly created as a result of these operations. So without a business case, it's not possible to achieve this, but greening makes a business case. Another example I bring you, I'm sure all of you are looking at the tags in your clothing, in your shirts, in what you wear. So you would see that some of them were made in Indonesia. In Indonesia, 149 small and medium companies, primarily working in textile garment industries, have been able to save 20 million US dollars per year by cutting down on their raw material inputs, energy inputs, wastewater consumption, water consumption, and wastewater generation. And they have already, during our work with them, been able to also invest $10 million into this endeavor. So clearly, there is a very strong business case for recovering a green recovery. I give you the developing country examples for two reasons. One, value chains are global. So what happens in Indonesia, what happens in North Africa, in the small and medium enterprises feeds directly into the products that are consumed in the European market. So the green recovery covers not only the European market when Europe starts its recovery in a green way. Second, the competitiveness that we have been able to achieve, improvement in competitiveness that these firms out there in the developing countries have been able to achieve, we believe as UNIDO is also much more possible for European firms, European small and medium SMEs, because of all facilities and the single market, financing, skills, and opportunities, new business opportunities that are much in abundance in the European Union. So as with that, I would like to stop for now. There is a strong case for Europe to recover, European firms to recover in a green way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nilguntas. I think it was really helpful from your side to give us the perspective of the developing countries and making a very strong case that the business interests and the environmental interests actually are going well hand in hand, and also showing us that in Europe our potential for the green transition is possibly even much greater given our internal capacities and the development of the business sector already. So thank you for this, and let me give the floor to Ms. Ulrike Raab-McCullough to give her remarks and possibly also, some responses or insights into what she has just heard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, thanks for inviting me and to take part in this discussion. I think it is very important, and especially your question, what role can industry play towards an ambitious sustainable industry strategy? I think it can play a very big role. And I'm representing especially SMEs, and I was also engaged in the industry strategy high-level group, and we developed a sustainable industry strategy. And I really believe that we can combine create a win-win situation between companies, between economy and ecology. And as Mrs. Tass already said before, we have to create this win-win situation. And if we do so, I'm sure that we can also solve the climate crisis. And I always emphasize that especially companies and industry are not the problem, they are the solution. And for me, solving the climate crisis, we need 3 I's. I for innovation, technology and research and development is really the key. We have a lot of technologies already available, but they have to be made known and they have to be used. And there the 2 other I's are coming in. It is investment. So also with all the investment plans of the European Union and also the member states, they have to make the wise investments in green technologies and in the innovations which are already on the market. And of course, we have to inform, we have to bring information to other companies and also to the people. So I have experienced a lot that there are several technologies or several measurements are not known well enough. And if we are really having this 3I strategy, that we are going more in innovation, in investments and information, I'm sure that we will have more progress. And we developed also the industry strategy, basically that we said, okay, we want to have a sustainable production in Europe, and we want to make sure that production comes back to Europe. So with investing in greening of the economy, we have to make wise investments and also take wise measurements that industry can produce in Europe again. And so we have to not bring on some more regulations or some more red tapes. We really have to incentivize. And as I'm representing SMEs, I also always emphasize that SMEs are really the backbone of the European economy. And also in industry sector, we have a lot of SMEs. So more than 90% of the companies active in industry sector are also SMEs. So when it comes to greening of the economy and greening of the industry, we have to make sure that SMEs are on the forefront. And we have a lot of SMEs which are active in innovation, in green technologies. And I'm also an example myself. So I'm running a company who is investing in green technology and developing green technology since more than 30 years now. And we created a lot of solutions, but of course they have to be implemented. And so we have, with all the programs on the Green Deal and all the programs now also recovering from the crisis of COVID, we have to invest in the right measures and in the right innovations and technologies. And I'm sure if all the players are pulling on the same string and going in the same direction, I'm really very positive that we can reach our climate goals on one hand, but also make sure that we have industry in Europe again and keep, of course, also the jobs and the welfare here in Europe.
Thank you, Ulrike. Thank you very much for those opening remarks. Now, my question to you is, would you have something to respond to or directly address to any of the other panelists? Because if so, you can just speak up now freely. If not, okay, Claudia, please go on.
Should I start?
Definitely.
So I wanted to reiterate, of course, the importance of technological investments to enable us to enable a green transition. And looking into how fast technologies are developing, we of course need to match that with the skills that our workforce has. And looking at how our industry has been construed historically, we can see that the industrial revolutions often built their industry that was focused on centralization, focus on your unit, focus on producing in scale and mass. Currently in the transition, we're seeing that the ownership of an item, the ownership of machinery, ownership is not the key. What is instead the key is access. And having access as a core value driving also this transition means that our industry needs to rethink how it's organized also and how it creates value. Because the value that is created is not just by creating, of course, products, but it's also about making sure that the maintenance continues, that you can continue adding value throughout the lifetime of the product. And this means that a lot of our industries actually need to add the component of also being service companies. And making that transition, understanding that potential it brings, requires a lot of courage from industry. It requires that leaders understand that you need to invest in new skills, understanding how you can use the platform economy. It also requires a different kind of system thinking. The World Economic Forum works very actively with, for example, ranking the skills that are the most important for the economy currently. And we do this ranking basically every 4th, 5th year. And I think it was quite interesting when they released one of their latest reports in 2018, highlighting that until 2022, one of the most important skills that we need to train in the workforce is also the ability to have systems thinking and have systems analysis. And having that kind of wider picture where you think about the ecosystem which you're working in, and then I mean the ecosystem of the different partners and stakeholders, of course, as well as the wider ecosystem, that's, if you have that kind of skill, you can also in a different way understand how you're creating value and how you can create that value in a more sustainable way. So I think that I would want to complement the previous comments in terms of highlighting that the current industrial revolution is about understanding that you're working in a system, taking responsibility for greater parts in that system, and seeing that that will create long-term value. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, and well noted. Nilgun, please.
Thank you, Claudia. What you have said inspired me to talk about an industrial service which is quite unusual. We've been working with Austrian, German, and Swiss environment ministries since 2004 on what we call chemical leasing. Normally, manufacturing firms use a lot of chemicals, whether it's for dyeing a material or cleaning products. Chemicals are used, and the normal way of using the chemical is to buy in barrels, in liters, in bulk, the chemical, owning the chemical that you will use in your production processes. Through chemical leasing, and this is quite prominently used both also in Europe since we started this initiative, but also in far-flung places like Vietnam to Sri Lanka to Brazil to Argentina and in South Africa and so on. The chemical is sold by the producer of the chemical as a service. For instance, by the number of bottles that this chemical is going to clean, or the parts that this chemical is going to clean, or if it's a glue, by the number of labels that this glue is going to stick the label onto the chemical. This saves both the amount of chemicals used, but not only that, after washing, after cleaning bottles, for example, you have water that contains the chemical, and when you buy it by the barrel, you have to make sure that you dispose of that wastewater properly. But you can return it to the chemical producer, which will be able to earn additional financial gains by extracting that chemical out of the water, because they have that opportunity. So clearly, not owning, but using a product, even if it's a chemical, as a service, is a great initiative. Great, it's both green, and it has a very good business case, both for the producer of the original product, but also for the user of the product and environment. If you allow me just to add another one, the new Circular Economy Action Plan of the European Union is exemplary. It shows opportunities, business opportunities. In fact, because it's called circular economy, by name, as its name suggests, it does not focus on the environment only. It first focuses on the economy of circulating. It uses the power of the economy and its actors so that use of resources are reduced, you increase your both efficiency, but also resource productivity, meaning the dollars, euros that you earn that reduction and also mitigates climate change and negative environmental impacts. So circular economy practices provide new business opportunities and creation of great new jobs, for instance, in remanufacturing. And I will just stop here to elaborate further later if the opportunity arises. Thank you.
Most definitely, and thank you, Nilgun, for bringing up the European Union Circular Economy Action Plan. And let me use that as a springboard to deep dive into the European context now, because this is the Prague European Summit, so obviously Europe is at the heart of what we are discussing here. And the reality is that the Green New Deal is the top of the agenda politically, even in times of COVID, which I guess many of us assumed would lead to the certain diminishment of that agenda. Probably we can see that that has not happened, and the environmental and climate concerns are really high up. And I mean, all of the business, but also political leaders tell us that the recovery must go hand in hand. So recovery from COVID, pandemic, and the economic recession linked thereto has to be linked to the climate targets and environmental goals of the European Union. Now, at this point in time, the new multi-annual financial framework, the new European Union budget, is to some degree held hostage, so hopefully we'll see that being resolved on the political level. But you've spoke quite a lot about what we can expect from industries and what industries, SMEs particularly, should be doing to stay competitive and stay on top of the game and combine the business model with the environmental concerns. Now, what, in your view, should industries be expecting from the political leaders and from the political agenda? So what is there in the Green New Deal quite specifically for industries in your point of view? And just feel free to raise a hand, please. Ulrike?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So basically, I think the most important thing is really with the Green Deal that it is combined with the industry strategy and all other strategies which are under the head of the Green Deal. So we have already mentioned the Circular Economy Action Plan, but there is also the Sustainable Chemical Strategy, the Farm to Fork Strategy, Climate Law, and only to name a few ones. And so I think the most important thing really is that all those strategies and all those topics are really coordinated. And it is also very important that we also not only concentrate on the European Union, we also have to concentrate and negotiate with all other regions that they also keep with the Paris Agreement, and so that we have also for the future a level playing field, because it would not make sense to actually to bring up or to bring on some additional burdens or red tapes to European companies, and then they have to close down, and then the production is in other regions where they do not respect the climate goals. And so I think this is also a really major topic for European decision makers, to make sure that we can engage also other regions in reducing CO2 emission. And of course, we have to then also make sure that our technology, which we have here in Europe, will be also exported to other regions, and that this European technology can also help reducing CO2 emissions in other regions. And we have to really make sure that, as Claudia also said, that we need the right skills also for people to set on those new technologies. And I think this is also a very big chance we have now, that with greening of the economy, with the transition, there are a lot of job potentials. But of course, we need the right skills. And So the last thing is really, as I emphasized before, SMEs are the backbone of the economy. So we have to make sure that, especially now with COVID crisis, we have to revise also the Green Deal in this aspect, that the companies get the support and that they are not overloaded with the transition, so that they really can see the potentials and the chances and use also these chances.
Thank you. Claudia, please.
Yes, I just wanted to add to Ulrike's very insightful comment that I think approaching the Green Deal is something we need to do collaborating across Europe and within the framework of the European Union, but it also requires each individual governments to really take brave steps as well. So looking at what is happening in Sweden, for example, the Swedish government has, for example, one initiative where they're investing roughly 1 billion Swedish crowns, I think, per year towards sustainable innovation and new solutions in collaboration with industry partners. So they're supporting this transition. They're also setting up these acceleration hubs and innovation hubs to enable more green tech and clean tech innovation. So I see that as much as it's extremely important that we have knowledge transfer across Europe and collaborate, it's also important that each country takes a great responsibility. And I would wish to see that the countries actually try to outdo each other in this arrangement, collaborating, but also trying to innovate and lead the way in terms of new initiatives to inspire national industry partners to go forward. And of course, then share the knowledge among each other.
Thank you. Nilgum, would you like to compliment?
If I may, Thomas?
Yes, most definitely. You're
May
welcome. Yes.
Thank you. I totally agree both with what Ulrike and Claudia has said. As an intergovernmental agency, we have a lot of. We were established in 1966, by the way. It was a different era. So we have amassed a huge amount of evidence and experience over the evolution of industries. What we have seen that costs the most for businesses, but also to societies, is the lack of coordination. Policy coordination, and as Ulrike has mentioned, cutting down the red tape, but getting down to business as fast as possible is the key. There are huge coordination costs, lack of coordination, that costs both the societies and the businesses. So at the global level, we agree fully that Europe's green recovery cannot happen by itself. In fact, yesterday I was listening to some of the more political, geopolitical perspectives. It has to be, everybody has to be brought on board, from the large manufacturing hub that China is to the United States and so on. Putting the politics aside, looking at where the industry is happening, this is critical. But at the global level, we have partnered with the UN Environment Programme and the European Commission, the EU. We are preparing to launch a global alliance on circular economy and resource efficiency, hopefully on the margins of the online UN Environment Assembly that is going to convene in February, towards the end, 22nd of February next year. And the objective of this global alliance will be to share experience, first create a shared understanding. And it has to cover not only Europe or a few of the larger countries, but everyone in the global commons. to create the shared understanding that circular economy and resource efficiency is a means and can help us achieve our global goals with respect to climate change, economic and health impacts of not greening our recovery, uh, creation of new jobs, you also in the what we call the fourth industrial revolution, the digital jobs and so on, to talk about the barriers, solutions, learn together, create partnerships, but hopefully eventually converging on global actions that will enable widespread implementation of circular economy practices and resource efficiency. Coming to the country level, we need the governments, the policymakers also to take a similar approach. Shared vision, not only by among the government entities, but also, very importantly, with the businesses. There are good examples, as Claudia has said. In Sweden, there is an example of the 100 circular economy deals that the Netherlands, quite a number of years ago, struck with the business community, between the business community and the government. And the government has not even had to invest public funds into all these initiatives because they had to as Ulrike said, they had only to remove a few barriers for the business to undertake green actions. So creating a cross-sectoral pre-competitive space for consultations between government and the business community, as well as including the consumer interests into that dialogue, and joint thinking, joint learning, and joint decision making on how to move forward, at least in a few fields, will go a long way. And we are, as UNIDO, we can strongly vouch that it is going to work, but because we have seen why it hasn't worked and why it has worked. Coordination of policy with business action and consumer awareness is key. The 3 I's. And in this process, you can create a lot of innovation, incorporate digitalization, benefit from research and development, overall better well-being for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilgun. This would be almost good for closing remarks, but we are definitely not there yet. And let me still push you into some more timely and controversial issues, perhaps. I would now ask if it would be possible to present the poll that was posed to the audience. And I don't know if you will be able to see it. Hopefully, yes. The question there on Slido was, will the carbon border adjustment mechanism help European industries decarbonize faster? And as of now, it seems that almost 80% of the respondents, so an overwhelming majority, says yes. Now, I know that you all come more from the ecosystem of SMEs rather than big industries and potentially big polluters. But still, I think the carbon border adjustment mechanism is a very timely item on the agenda of the European Green Deal. And maybe more generally, I mean, the question of the safeguarding of global competitiveness of European industry is definitely on the table. So any of your thoughts or remarks on this question in particular would be welcome. Yes, please, Ulrike.
Yeah, so I would like also to take this then as my last input, because unfortunately I have to hop now from Prague to Brussels. I'm taking part at 11 o'clock in another discussion. So this digitalization makes it possible. But coming back to the carbon global carbon pricing, so I think it is very important that we find a solution to have a global carbon price. And especially maybe as a first step for the power sector and also for the sectors with high emission. And this would bring a competitiveness to all industry sectors and to all regions. But we have also discussions about setting up a carbon border adjustment mechanism. Here, we really need a detailed assessment. If the mechanism can be then compatible with the World Trade Organizations, we have to make sure that we are not having then a protectionism again. So I think really the first step should be to have a worldwide global carbon price. And of course, the most importantly and effective carbon leakage protection must be also further ensured. And I really hope that we can manage, and that, of course, the governments, the international governments can manage to really have a joint action plan, and of course also a joint carbon pricing. So with this, I would like to say goodbye and also to thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. And I'm sorry to have to leave, but unfortunately I have to. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulrike, for both your insights and for being able to make it on the panel, despite the time constraints on your side. So we wish you best of luck in your work and hope to see you again in some sort of a debate later on. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. So hopefully we'll still be able to follow up on this with both Claudia and Nilgun. So perhaps, Claudia, up to you. I mean, what do you think from your perspective, perhaps from the Swedish perspective as well? What do you feel is the mood among the business leaders there when it comes to ensuring global competitiveness at a time of growing price of carbon?
It's an excellent question, and I would want to see that the dialogue shifts towards more of the business opportunities in the space. A little bit like I mentioned in my introductory statement, if we're looking at the tremendous business potential in carbon capture, in energy storage, and so many of the clean tech and green tech areas, industry is truly seeing that this is a potential revenue source. It's also a potential way to grow further and to innovate towards the future. So many of the leaders I'm speaking to are saying that there's a tremendous potential in the circular economy, that this is a way to decrease waste. This is a way to innovate faster towards more sustainable and more durable and more purposeful materials. So the dialogues I'm having is, of course, with a lot of visionary leaders that actually see this as a potential and are also seeing the movements in other regions of the world, as mentioned, China, the US, which are really investing in this as a growth opportunity. So I would say that the dialogues I take part of through our programs, Stellar Capacity, with different leaders from some of Sweden's biggest industries, everything from Scania, ABB, NCC, many of them are actually seeing this as a path forward to innovate, to create more value going forward. So I would say that is the response. And I think we need to change the narrative a bit, because the narrative we've had for such a long time has been that, how can we deal with the fact that this is hampering our innovation, hampering our competitiveness? And by changing that narrative and instead actually looking into the potential opportunities and the reasons to why so many other regions are investing in more basically green solutions, if we look at that will actually spur even a more positive movement forward, I would say.
Thank you for the positive message then, Claudia, and really happy to hear that this is the narrative and this is the prevailing opinion of visionary leaders, at least in the part of Europe that you're working in. Nilgun, perhaps your insights on that with a view of the global context would be very helpful. I mean, the global carbon pricing came up, Ulrike brought it up, and perhaps, of course, Europe can be one of the initiators of such a debate, which I would dare say is much needed. So what are your thoughts on the business positioning vis-a-vis this agenda?
Well, first of all, I think we have to. I agree with Claudia that the narrative has to change. We have been promoting that, but global initiatives such as these carbon pricing, for example, are not easy to come. They have because they have never really been achieved so far. There are no good examples of that that have worked, but they are doable. So, as I mentioned just a moment ago, this requires a global alliance on any of these governance issues. I consider this to be a governance issue in the long run, because if everybody is going to accept and enforce it, it is such. So, but I think the pandemic and the need to recover now creates the right conditions, both for getting around into a global alliance to discuss how we can come back better, achieve a green recovery. And within that context, I think it's very important that carbon pricing and other issues has to be discussed, and the future has to be designed. Like China, possibly because of what EU has brought forward on the carbon border tax, has declared that it is going to move forward on its own initiatives, which was unexpected in most cases. China has been doing a lot of greening itself with the bringing back the US to the Paris Agreement would be very important. But starting from practical steps such as circular economy, implementation of circular economy practices, I want to hope that the world would be able to agree on global actions that will make that will improve the competitiveness of the businesses, but also protect the environment. I think it's possible.
Thank you, Nilgun, for the words of hope, really. And now let me turn in our remaining time to the questions that were posed by the audience. And there is one that focuses specifically on the Visegrad countries, so let me try to come back to it still at a later stage. But I'd like you to address a question that deals with an issue that came up repetitively and again, I think, is about the need for industries to create the right skill set, and I mean to foster the right skill set creation among the society. So the question here is, what skills particularly will be important so as to achieve the global competitiveness of European industries? We spoke about the right skills, the proper skills. So what are those skills? Claudia, please.
Well, this is a topic I'm very passionate about, of course, because Stellar Capacity really has the ambition to help train these skills. We actually have as a motto for Stellar Capacity that we train skills that robots can't replace. So we'll see whether the future will prove us right or wrong, whether the skills we're training are critical going forward. But the way we see it is that technology is accelerating extremely fast in so many different areas, and it's also converging. So we see basically computing power enabling progress in biotechnology. We see areas in synthetic biology progressing super fast, so that individuals now have the R&D possibilities to work in virtual labs that previously only large industries would have, for example. We're seeing energy technologies merging with basically AI robotics. We're seeing a tremendous progress in terms of being able, for example, to create even solar panel paint to paint our houses, to be able to leverage more of the power of the sun. So seeing all of these technologies accelerating, of course, we need to make sure that our workforce also has the right mindset, the right leadership, the right skills to leverage this technological progress. And many of the technological skills actually get outdated in about 18 months. The life length of the skill has gone down significantly, and it's really required that we continuously update our skills throughout life. That, of course, means for industry that we need to recruit for new skills, but we also need to train the workforce that we have so that the workforce can stay ahead and continue to stay ahead. Many companies have shifted from doing a skills mapping once per year to doing a skills mapping once every quarter to make sure that they are up to date with the skills. Many go out to their employees and say, go to our website, compare your existing skill set with the skills we're looking for right now. And if you see that the gap is too large, you should really definitely focus on upskilling to meet the new skills and knowledge that is required. So to be able to acquire a lot of what many people define as hard skills, I don't like that division hard skills, soft skills, because in one way, the soft skills, the collaboration, the creativity that you need, the curiosity is actually a power skill, because once you learn it, you can have it throughout life, and it enables you to also get more of the hard skills, technological skills. But to be able to acquire and learn continuously about technology, seeing how blockchain can impact, for example, more transparency in logistical chains and supply chains, to be able to work with user experience in terms of creating value for customers and for the stakeholders, you need to continuously also have a mind of curiosity and basically an active learning strategy. I've been quite involved with the World Economic Forum, and that is quite interesting because in 2018, one study there pointed towards that we need to spend 101 days of learning to meet the digital skills gaps we have until 2022. And that translates into 3 to 4 hours per week of learning. And so this is something that we definitely need to implement more in industry. So what I would say is we both need to train for skills that are very technological, but also the interpersonal ones and the digital mindset of being open, flexible, agile, creative, experimental, and very collaboratively oriented. Those are the skills I think are super important.
Great. A concise message and so much information in it. I mean, 100 days to spend on learning in the next 2 or 3 years. It seems like a lot. Let's hope we can actually aspire to that. Nogum, would you like to give your point of view?
Yes, absolutely. Claudia addressed the very high-level skills that one would need in a digital world. But we are, as you know, very strongly promoting circular economy. There is a circular economy action plan of the European Union. So compared to what Claudia has talked about the digital technology skills, IT-related skills and innovation, there is a lot of other skills that are required. Let me give you the example of remanufacturing. Or repairs. That's just only repairs. Let's say you have some electronic equipment or even a washing machine or refrigerator. Instead of getting rid of it at what you might think is its end of life, getting it repaired will give it a second and even a third life, doubling the utility that you draw from its first life, including all the embedded energy, the materials, the labor costs that went into the first life of the machine. You can get a second life. So for that, you will require different skills, engineering skills for that you could use for repairs and maintenance of all kinds of equipment, from high-tech equipment like aerospace, defense equipment, medical, robotics, But not only those, including down to, vending machines, pumps, telecommunication equipment, surgical tables, office equipment, excavation, even bakery equipment, right? So there is so much to do, and there is so much to gain from that kind of work. When I was a representative in Vietnam, I had this consultant who was an economist, but when he retired, he went to school and learned how to do plumbing repairs. And he has been telling me he draws as much, even more, personal satisfaction going to homes and repairing plumbing. So in our fast-moving societies, we have, in a way, forgotten some of these skills, and these could come back easily within a circular economy context. And trust me, it could also be personally satisfactory, as my friend and colleague told me.
Thank you very much, Nilgun. And with only 4 minutes left, let me move to the last question that was also posed by the audience. And that was specifically focused on the V4 countries, so I might broaden it a little bit. So the question was, what should the Visegrad countries, that being Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland, do to improve the conditions for industries to focus more on green innovations? So maybe more broadly, but I'll ask you to answer very briefly, is what can carbon-intensive countries and carbon-intensive economies do to nudge the industries that are the backbone of their economies to transform faster and better?
Let me give it a go. It's the energy. In any product, the highest carbon content comes from the energy that has been used during the mining, extraction, and processing of, let's say, the metal or the non-metallic mineral that goes into a product. So greening the energy input into manufacturing will go a very long way in what the governments could do and should do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Claudia, any of your thoughts on that?
I can only agree about the focus on energy, and I would reiterate that it's a collaborative effort. It's both from the governmental side in terms of creating different incentive programs. It's about enabling more risk in the area through these kind of incentive programs, and also making sure that the talent, the opportunities for technological development is there. So I would say that Europe needs to focus on really growing further the knowledge economy. We have been extremely innovative in many different ways. Many of the European countries are also coming out really high in innovation indices globally. But at the same time, we're seeing a tremendously fast progress in other regions and huge investments both in China and the US. And we need to also define the vision and move forwards. We have experienced in many countries a great development, but we're also seeing an acceleration in other regions where we shouldn't think about how to keep up, but we should think about how to take the lead. And this, of course, encompasses many different factors in the ecosystem, but that's what I would say. We need to ask ourselves on a national level and on a collaborative level for the European Union, how do we define the way forward to dare to take the lead also in this field?
Thank you very much, Claudia, and thank you to all our panelists who were able to join us on this excellent discussion on green transitioning, What role can industry play towards an ambitious, sustainable industrial strategy for 2030 and 2050? We covered a whole range of topics, starting from the skills that will be needed for the new economy. Also, of course, linking the whole question to the COVID and post-COVID recovery. And then, of course, also bringing into play the European Green Deal and the expectations and assumptions that industries and businesses have from that. I believe the message that we should take from this is that the economic progress and transformation of the industry can go hand in hand and must go hand in hand with the environmental and climate agenda. And I'm very happy that you as audience also were able to present some questions and opinions during this debate. So thank you once again to both the audience and our panelists to join us at the Prague European Summit debate. So thank you to Claudia Olsen, Nilgun Tas, and Ulrike Grabner-Koller, who was unfortunately already had to leave earlier. And I hope to continue in those excellent discussions with you in the coming times. So all the best in your work, and thank you very much.